Do you want to know which running backs to start or sit in week 5 for fantasy football? Stay tuned. We'll let you know. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre. He's Chris. We're going to go game by game, breaking down every running back that matters for fantasy football to let you know who should be in your lineup and who shouldn't. Let's go over those running backs that if you have them on your squad, you're putting them in there, no questions asked. Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Leonard Fournette, and Jonathan Taylor if he does play on Thursday night. So let's get to that Thursday night matchup. So the number one running back, probably number one pick in a lot of fantasy drafts, Jonathan Taylor, did get his ankle rolled up on and is in question for this week. We don't know as of right now what his status is. So let's just kind of start with that, Chris. If Jonathan Taylor plays, of course, you're playing him. But what about Nyheim Hines? If Taylor doesn't go, is he a guy that you feel compelled to put in your lineup?
I do in PPR leagues. I don't think we're going to see Nyheim Hines, handle 20 plus carries, but he'll probably handle, 10 to 12 carries and likely will play way more snaps, which means more chances for receptions. So I think if Jonathan Taylor is out, Nyheim Hines is a solid start in PPR formats.
You'd like to think so. I mean, I'm very iffy on this. I can't say for sure I would start him because I just feel like we've been let down by Nyheim Hines so much. We had this promise by his coach saying, yeah, you want to pick him in fantasy, we're going to get him more involved. He's barely been involved at all this year. And it's not like they have this great receiving core taking the load. He should be getting the ball more, and he's not. And he's not getting a lot of early down work because he's not that type of guy. So I just don't know. It's not a great matchup. So I feel like you can start him. He's kind of more like a flex play, though. I don't feel like, even if you have JT, that he's just automatic plug and play. There's a lot of guys that I feel have more upside. And then on the other side, well, this is the injury game for running backs. Javonte Williams, very sad news. Out for the year, not just a torn ACL, but that LCL, that combo pack injury. Same thing that happens to J.K. Dobbins. So he's going to be out for about 15 months. So right now it's Melvin Gordon. Is Melvin Gordon your go-to?
Definitely not a go-to, but if you need him, you can start him. I am a little worried that we saw a lot of Mike Boone in that game after Javonte went down. I don't think it's just going to be Melvin Gordon's backfield. I think it's going to be a split, maybe even more Mike Boone. So to me, he's kind of like a flex him, start him if you need him kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel better about Gordon than I do about Hines because you know that he's a guy who can play on all three downs. I don't feel great about this offense, but man, that Colts defense has been pretty bad. So I feel Gordon is kind of in that RB2 range right now. I think it's a pretty good situation for him. I don't feel like Denver is going to be really playing from behind too much, especially Colts without JT. So I feel pretty good about Gordon. He always has some touchdown upside. You mentioned Mike Boone. Look, you could pick him up. I don't feel like I have to make a huge bid for him, but do you feel Mike Boone has fantasy value in week 5?
Same kind of like as Gordon. He probably won't catch as many passes as Gordon because he's a terrible pass catcher, but I think he's another guy. If you need to flex him, if you need to start him, you can. Not a must start, but if you need him this week, if you're desperate, you lost Javonte, whatever, I think you can start him.
Yeah, I feel like I should, once again, feel like he's a guy who should be able to be playable, but I'm going to wait because I think that really he's going to be only involved in early downs. I feel like he's kind of dependent on either a big play or a touchdown. I'm not sure he'll get that. I really want to see this Broncos offense actually be productive. Maybe in a really plus matchup, I would say yes, but right now I'll say I'm just going to wait and hold off on Boone for now. All right, now let's get to the Giants and Packers. You got Saquon. You're pretty happy because you got the top running back in fantasy as of right now. Now with the Packers, you have that timeshare, but Aaron Jones looking pretty good. You roll with Aaron Jones against the Giants.
Yeah, I think Aaron Jones is a good start this week against this Giants defense. Not a good run defense. Aaron Jones is ripping off huge runs almost every time he touches the ball, so I think you got to roll with Aaron Jones this week.
I agree. Jones did better than expected this past week. Got shut down by Tampa, but otherwise he's been pretty good. So in this matchup, I'm definitely going to go with Jones if I have him. So what does that mean for A.J. Dillon?
I think A.J. Dillon is startable. I'm not going to put him in like the must-start category, but I think as a flex, if you need him, he's startable.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to go a little farther and say I really like Dillon in this matchup. I think the game script could work more to his favor than to Jones. So I'm saying Dillon is going to be a must start this week, and hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised. All right, Steelers and Bills. You might have noticed, sadly, we have taken Najee off the must start, the no doubt list. But are you still going to start him if you have him?
I mean, yes, if I have Najee Harris, I'm still starting him, because what are the chances you have two running backs that are getting more work than Najee Harris? I think you still have to start him. It's not a great matchup against the Bills, but if you've got Najee, unless you somehow have two other great running backs, you pretty much have to start him.
Yeah, exactly. What are the chances you have two guys you think are going to get more touches? It's not a good matchup. Look, can't lie about that, right? On the road against Buffalo, that's almost as bad as you can get, but he is a pass-catching back. He's still going to get all the work there. Maybe Kenny Pickett helps this offense. It can get worse. They sort of got a boost from him last week. So I'll say, yeah, you've got to start Najee Harris. On the other side, really was almost all Devin Singletary this past week. Of course, he didn't do much, but it's kind of his backfield for now. So how do you feel about him against the Steelers?
I mean, pretty much the same way I always feel about him. If you need him, like if you're desperate, you can start him, but he's not a guy you have to start.
I'm going to agree with that. You could play him kind of as a third running back or flex. I kind of feel like with some of the injuries to the Buffalo wide receiver core, we might see Singletary catch a few passes again, but yeah, that upside is always going to be capped. Chargers facing the Browns. Austin Eckler is back, at least for now, because of those touchdowns. And then on the other side, we know Nick Chubb now. I mean, these two guys are top three in terms of scoring. But what about Kareem Hunt? We were both kind of let down. Thought he would have a big week against Atlanta, and he didn't. Do we keep rolling with him against the Chargers?
I can't say he's a must start, even though it's a great matchup against the Chargers, right? They've got torched by the Jaguars, got torched by the Texans on the ground. Like, they're giving up a ton on the ground, and Joey Bosa is not going to be back. But I still think he's startable. Like, if you need him as a flex, he's startable. He still has lots of upside. So not a must start, but a guy, if you need him, you can start him.
I'm right there with you. Don't give up on him. Look, this Chargers run defense is really not that good. And you know what? Hunt hasn't really put it together in terms of fantasy points, but he had some chances, right? He's getting red zone touches. Jacoby Brissett stole a touchdown from him near the goal line. So don't give up on Hunt, but he's not a must start. Speaking of bad run defenses, we got the Texans facing the Jaguars. So let's talk about Dameon Pierce. I mean, look, we might not be too far from saying he's an every week no-brainer must start, but in this matchup, I think we have to say yes, you go with him, right?
Yeah, you gotta. He is getting to almost must start category, but you gotta start him this week.
And James Robinson finally had his first really dud of the season, but this is a get right spot, isn't it?
Yeah, get right spot for him. They shouldn't be trailing by multiple scores and having to throw, so I think you've got to start James Robinson.
Yeah, got to start him. Definitely a good spot for him. And then I feel obligated to mention that Travis Etienne is still on the roster. Is there any reason to have any confidence in him at this point?
Not this week. It looks like right now the only time you can have confidence in Travis Etienne is if the Jaguars are getting blown out. Because we saw last week he actually did finally get more run than James Robinson, but that's because they were trailing. In this game, I doubt that's going to be the case. So no, not starting Travis Etienne.
Yeah, don't really know what the deal is there. Look, even Jamal Agnew, guy who's like a return man, hybrid running back receiver, he's scoring more fantasy points than Travis Etienne. There's no way you can put Etienne in your lineup to me, especially in this matchup where they shouldn't really be losing. If so, not by much. So no, you cannot start Travis Etienne. All right, Bears going to face the Vikings. So what about David Montgomery? We don't know as of right now what his status is. Could be back, not supposed to be a serious injury. If Montgomery is active for this game, do you put him right back in your lineup?
Absolutely. Vikings defense doesn't scare me one bit. Khalil Herbert taking touches from him doesn't scare me one bit. If Montgomery is good to go, I'm playing him.
I agree, and I do think that even if Herbert still is somewhat involved, it's not going to be 50-50. It's going to be mostly Montgomery. He's the pass-catching back. Herbert doesn't do that, so yeah. I would start Montgomery if he's a full go. And then that leads us to Khalil Herbert. Thoughts on him either with or without Montgomery?
Well, with Montgomery, I don't think you can start Khalil Herbert. I mean, you're just really hoping for a touchdown. But if Montgomery sits again, I think Khalil Herbert's a great start. I know he didn't have a huge fantasy game last week, but he still went, over 100 yards. Against the Vikings, I feel good about him. So if there's no Montgomery, you've got to start Herbert.
All right. And once again, total agreement. Yeah, with Montgomery, not interesting enough. Again, there's no buys. Unless you happen to suffer multiple injuries at running back, which some of us have, you probably shouldn't need Herbert. If Monty sits, then yeah, you can go with Herbert again. And then Dalvin Cook, he's back. Shoulder didn't bother him. Does that mean he's an auto start too?
This week he is. It's the Bears. He should have success against his defense. So I think if you have Dalvin Cook, you should feel fairly good about him this week.
Yeah, running games should thrive against the Bears for sure. So I'm going to say definitely go with Cook with confidence this week. All right, Lions going to visit the Patriots, otherwise known as the Matt Patricia Bowl. So what about DeAndre Swift? Another guy whose status is very much up in the air. Look, he wasn't on IR. He's supposed to sit for a couple weeks. It doesn't mean he will, so let's just throw it out there. What if he does manage to suit up for this game? What do you do with him?
This is so tough. It depends. Like if he practices all week and there's no limitations, then you have to play DeAndre Swift. But if it's one of those things where he's not practicing all week, and then they're like, well, he'll be a game time decision, I can't chance it. So really, to me, it just comes down to what DeAndre Swift do we get. But more than likely, he's probably going to sit with the bye next week. So, yeah.
I really don't expect him to play. But even if he does, I'm kind of going with what I said last week. I'm just sitting. I'm waiting. I'm not going to risk him being in there for 5 carries, playing a quarter and then aggravating that injury, just not being 100% or just being a decoy or whatever. I'm going to wait till after the bye, whether they do or not. So DeAndre Swift, I'm just not even going to worry about it. Jamal Williams has been great so far. He broke out last week, couple touchdowns. He's just been everything that they were hoping that DeAndre Swift would be. So Jamal Williams, again, give me your thoughts with or without Swift.
With a not limited Swift, he's an okay start. But if Swift is out again, I'm not as excited about him as I was last week, of course, because that matchup was so good. Patriots run defense, definitely better than the Seahawks, but still, you got to roll with Jamal Williams. He's getting so many touches, and this Lions offense somehow is one of the best offenses in the NFL, so I think you got to roll with Jamal Williams.
Well, here's the thing. Look, I'm going to say Williams must start this week because even though obviously a tougher defense with New England than Seattle, it's not a dominant run defense. And look, New England is not going to put up a ton of points on the board. Even though Detroit's defense is really bad, we're going to have maybe the second or third string quarterback playing. Who knows at this point for New England? Not scared of them, get into a big shootout. I feel like they'll be able to control the ground game. Williams will get a ton of touches. Even if Swift is active, Williams will still get a lot more touches. So I think Jamal Williams always has that touchdown upside. You have to keep rolling with him for this week. And then the two-headed monster there in New England. Let's start with Damian Harris. Starter sit week 5.
It's the Lions. You have to start Damian Harris. Unless you have really, really good running back options, you have to start Damian Harris.
I'm going to agree. Lions defense, bad. Patriots passing game, also bad. They're going to give them a lot of touches. Start Damian Harris. Feel the same way about Ramondre?
Absolutely. Any running back against the Lions is almost a must start. And these guys, like you said, they're not going to throw the ball. They're going to run it a ton. Both these guys going to be involved. Both of them have touchdown upside. You got to start Stevenson as well.
Put that check up there. Ramondre, also a strong start if you got him. Seahawks going to face the Saints. Chris, you called it. Rashad Penny, boom, last week. He definitely did that. But kind of a different matchup here going to New Orleans. Can he do it again?
Ooh, don't feel as good about Penny as I did last week. This is a tough run defense. It's unlikely the Seahawks are going to be able to put up the points they did last week against the Lions. Probably going to be a slow-paced, low-scoring game. I think he's a okay start if you need him. He can always score a touchdown, but not a guy I feel like you have to start.
Yeah, we're going to back off a little bit. Definitely a different matchup. Look, honestly, I thought the Saints defense would be better than it has been so far, but still, it's not going to be the score fest like we saw last week with Seattle and Detroit. So I'll say he is somebody you can start, but more on the flex radar than a solid RB2 for this week. And then what about Alvin Kamara? Maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. If he does, where are you at with him?
If he plays, I feel pretty good about him as a high-end RB2 this week, with a decent amount of upside because it's the Seahawks and they're really bad against the run. So if Kamara plays, I think you start him.
Yeah, I wish I had that much confidence. He hasn't been great. He's been banged up. And then we don't even know the status of Jameis Winston. And, it's kind of a mess there. So I feel like, yeah, you kind of almost have to go with him if he plays, but I'm worried. I'm nervous. So I guess I would say he's a can start, but not an absolute must start because in shallower leagues, maybe you do have better options. All right, Dolphins facing the Jets. Let's start with the Dolphins side. Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert. Who is it going to be this week? Who knows? Let's start with Chase Edmonds. Can you play him at this point?
No, he's just a touchdown dependent desperation flex play. I can't put Chase Edmonds in my lineup.
Yeah, even if against the Jets, I mean, who would have thought that? We thought he would be catching passes, owning the backfield, and he's not. And this is the last game, it was mostly Mostert. So you can't start Edmonds. Could you start Mostert?
I think Mostert's okay as a flex. I know we think this Jets defense, is a crazy bad run defense, but they've actually been pretty good the last couple of weeks. So I don't know if they're quite as bad against the run as we thought. Mostert will get the majority of the touches though, so I think you can flex him if you need him.
Yeah, it'd have to be kind of a deep league for me to flex Mostert because, again, when you get near the red zone there, they're usually throwing the ball or they're going to Edmonds first. So I don't know. I feel like Mostert's not a guy who catches enough passes. I think you can flex him, but it would have to be really deep league for me, or you just have a bad running back situation. And then Breece Hall, I think the takeover is happening. Do you feel like the takeover is happening?
It's happened. The takeover has already happened. You have to start Breece Hall every single week from here on out.
Definitely want to start Breece Hall for sure. And for Michael Carter, does he still have any value?
Very little. Very little. Like, you have to be extremely desperate. I'm not starting Michael Carter.
No. Look, the more Breece Hall gets involved, the less Michael Carter should even be on rosters. Probably a couple of weeks from now, people will be dropping him. So no reason to start him this week either. Falcons at the Bucks. This one's interesting. Just found out Cordero Patterson on IR. He's going to miss 4 weeks. So, it looks like Tyler Algier, rookie out of BYU, is going to be the lead dog there. Can you start him against this Tampa defense, though?
No. I know CEH just had a great game against this defense, but that's the Chiefs. The Bucks look terrible on Sunday night. Not expecting that this week. This is the Falcons offense, not the Chiefs offense. I cannot start Algier against the Bucks. I can't do it.
No, definitely can't do it. Look, a couple weeks ago, we're telling you to sit Aaron Jones and sit all these other guys against Tampa's run defense. We're not going to tell you to start Tyler Algier. So, no, you can't start him this week. And then the other side, we know Fournette's in your lineup. What about Rachaad White, your guy? He's finally coming alive, caught a few passes, scored a touchdown. Is he still, though, kind of a bench stash, or do you think you can actually put him in a lineup?
Yeah, I'm not ready to put him in my lineup just yet unless you're extremely desperate. So, to me, you still have to sit Rachaad White.
Yeah, it's so tempting, right? It's looking like Rachaad White now is going to be the new James White. I think it could be true, but what that means is he's probably going to be somebody they use more when they need to pass, maybe when they're behind. Don't think they're going to be behind too much against the Falcons, so I feel like this won't be a boom game for him. They had to pass a lot against Kansas City, so I'll say sit for now, but if you did draft him or pick him up, I'd be glad you did. All right, Titans and Commanders. This one's going to be interesting. So we got Antonio Gibson, and it looks like we might get the debut of Brian Robinson. So let's start with the Gibson side. Assuming Robinson does play, which it sounds likely, what do you do with Gibson?
Robinson plays, Robinson doesn't play. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not starting Antonio Gibson. I mean, Jonathan Williams looked better than Antonio Gibson last week. So Robinson or no, I am not starting Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Gibson had his time. If you had him, hopefully you traded him. Can't start Gibson this week. And so Robinson, first game, take a chance?
No. I know Ron Rivera has said, he might not be limited, but come on, we're talking about the first game, coming back from being shot twice, hasn't really had any contact in weeks. Let me see it first.
Yeah, I think caution is probably the best way to go here. So, look, keep him for now on your bench. I mean, maybe he scores, maybe he does get a lot of touches, but there's no guarantee. So, just for now, play it safe. 49ers at the Panthers, not a lot to talk about here because you got CMC on one side, and then the other side is still just Jeff Wilson. Does just Jeff Wilson interest you?
He's another guy who I think, if you need him as a flex, he's startable. He's getting the touches. Not a great matchup this week again, so only if you need him.
I'm with you there. He's kind of that break glass in case of emergency running back. Maybe you do need him because you had Javonte Williams or somebody else who's injured, but hopefully you don't. Eagles at the Cardinals, Battle of the Birds. Teams going in opposite directions, and same thing for these running backs. Miles Sanders now looking better, had a huge game this past week. Can he keep it going against the Cardinals?
Hey, I can't figure Miles Sanders out. I mean, he had a dream matchup 2 weeks ago, did nothing, and then this week goes off. It's another good matchup. He should be good. I'm going to say, like, as an RB2, you can start him because we know he has upside at least.
Yeah, I think I'm down enough on the Cardinals to say you could start Miles Sanders, but it's true. He always booms when you don't expect it and then busts when you do. So you could throw him out there, but you can never feel really good about it, right? But that upside is always kind of intriguing. And then James Conner, I mean, he's almost fallen out of, the status where you could even feel good about him in any matchup.
Yeah, and this is a tough matchup. I mean, he always has a chance to score, but outside of that, he's getting you nothing. If you're desperate, sure, because he gets the touches and he has a touchdown upside, but nothing more than a desperation flex.
Yeah, like I said, I'm down on the Cardinals. This whole team feels like it's kind of reeling, so I'm going to say no. I will sit James Conner unless I really don't have a better option. Cowboys going to face the Rams. Let's start with Zeke. At this point, we know what he is. It's not a star running back anymore. Can you start him against the Rams?
No, he just had two good matchups and did almost nothing in those games. Like, one touchdown 2 weeks ago, and that's it. Yeah, I don't understand how you could be starting Zeke right now. No, he's on my bench, especially against the Rams. On my bench.
Yeah, look, we thought he could do something against Washington, and he really didn't. So why would I feel good about him against the Rams on the road? So I will pass as well. Tony Pollard, any interest there?
No, because as long as Cooper Rush is a quarterback, he's not really targeting these running backs, and you can't even trust Tony Pollard as the guy who can catch 4 or 5 plus passes anymore. So I got to sit Pollard.
Yet another example of coaching staffs lying to us and the media by saying we're going to throw it to Tony Pollard. He's going to play out of the slot. He's not doing any of that. They're not throwing it to him. Okay, so I mean, you hope for that big play that he breaks a big run or scores a touchdown, but I'm not counting on it. I'm going to sit Tony Pollard. And then my boy Cam Akers looking better. You think he can do anything against the Cowboys?
I mean, maybe he could score a touchdown, but that's really all you're banking on here. So another guy who, if you need him as a flex, you can start him.
Yeah, I can't put him in must-start territory just yet. It's not like it's a great matchup. So I'll say you can start him and feel okay about him, but yeah, I want to see him keep improving as he has been the last couple of weeks. And then Darrell Henderson, I mean, I don't know if we even need to really talk about him anymore. Does he have any value in fantasy?
No, he's going to need Cam Akers to be out of the picture again to have any value. So not starting Darrell Henderson.
Yeah, you can't. Like, I think you can keep him on your bench, right? He's definitely a high-end handcuff, but for now, it's pretty obvious who Sean McVay likes better is Cam Akers. So you can't start Henderson. When the Bengals take on the Ravens, Joe Mixon will face J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins, of course, coming off a 2-touchdown performance. Some people will say, told you so. We'll say, let's wait and see. What do you say about this week against the Cincinnati Bengals?
I can't do it. It wasn't like he was, looked great running the ball. Barely played over 50% of the snaps. I mean, he did catch a couple passes, which I know people were freaking out about. And of course, he got those 2 touchdowns. But this Bengals run defense is really good and really underrated. These Bengals-Ravens games are usually high-scoring shootouts, lots of throwing the ball. I'm going to pass on J.K. Dobbins.
Hard pass. Okay. Well, look, I'm not going to say he's a must start, but I will say he's a pretty good start because here's the thing. He's really the only running back they're going to. Justice Hill, has been looking good in small spurts, but he's banged up. And then now we're hearing Rashad Bateman is hurt, and that's why, among other reasons, he didn't really play a lot at the end of last week's game. So look, if they're really injured, in terms of their number one receiver, and there's really no other running back taking touches from him, Dobbins always has that scoring upside. So I feel like he's a pretty decent start, but not going to go so far to say he's a must start. And then we end with the Raiders at the Chiefs. So Josh Jacobs coming off his best game of the year. Maybe we were wrong about him. Do you feel like he's the guy you have to put in there?
I feel like you do this week. This Chiefs run defense, nothing to be scared about, be scared off of, and he's getting the touches, he's getting the volume. So I think you roll with Josh Jacobs again.
Yeah, until further notice, he's being treated like a bell cow, which is not what we expected. So, yeah, I think right now you've got to say he's a must start. And then CEH, I mean, he keeps scoring. Again, these are the two guys who are making me eat my words. So, CEH also must start.
Look, I was a little skeptical the first few weeks. I said, okay, it's the Bucs, you got to sit him. And he went out there and tore it up, looked good running the ball. Like, yeah, didn't look great catching the ball because he had that bad drop. Scoring touchdowns, you have to play Clyde Edwards-Helaire, especially against the Raiders.
Yeah, against this Raiders defense. And look, I know they pulled out a victory, but it's still a bad defense. So I'm going to say, yeah, you got to roll with CEH if you got him. All right, now you know what to do with all those running backs. Either put them in or out of your lineup. But what about wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, everything else to help you set those winning lineups? We got it right here. Check out our playlist for week 5. And we'll help you get those winning lineups and get another victory on your fantasy squad.